Hi, my name is Ralph Harris. I'm the military guy. I'm commander of VFW Post 423 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Today's program is the fourth about Ann Arbor area military veterans. The first was about D-Day in Europe, and the second was about the Korean War. The third was about the Vietnam War, and today's program is about the Pacific Campaign during World War II. Today's guests are Dick Johnson from Ypsilanti, Michigan, who served in the United States Marine Air. Russell McLogan from Hillsdale, it's not exactly Ann Arbor, but it's close enough for tonight, who served in the United States Army. He's the author of a book called The Boy Soldier, which I read and highly recommend. We also have Roger Van Doren, immediately to my right, from Saline, Michigan, who served in the United States Marines. Before our guests tell us about their roles and activities during the Pacific Campaign, I'd like to share a few historical events, especially for those of you who are not old enough to remember it firsthand, which our guests obviously can. World War II began in the Far East during the summer of 1937 when Japanese troops invaded China. This was their first move in a Japanese plan to establish political and economic control over all of East Asia. This was an effort to create what they called a greater co-prosperity sphere. World War II in Europe began when Germany invaded Poland in 1939. The United States entered World War II by declaring war on Japan after they attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941. A date that all these gentlemen, I'm sure, remember well, as I do. A few days later, Germany declared war on the United States, and America was faced with a two-front war in Europe and in the Pacific. A political decision was made by the United States and its allies to defeat Germany first. The United States entered the war in the Pacific with only 2 aircraft carriers, a badly crippled fleet, and very few soldiers on the ground, mostly in the Philippines. The United States Army was defeated in the Philippines and fell back to Australia. The United States Navy halted the Japanese advance by defeating much larger Japanese Navy forces at the battles of Midway and Coral Sea. On August 7, 1942, the United States 1st Marine Division landed on Guadalcanal and Tulagi, beginning a long process of pushing the Japanese forces back towards their homeland. By early 1943, American industry was producing many more warships than were needed for either the closing phase of the Battle of the Atlantic or the support of Allied landing operations in the Mediterranean and Normandy. Most of these ships were therefore sent to the growing American fleets in the Pacific. Ground and air reinforcements were sent to General MacArthur's Southwest Pacific Theater and to Admiral Nimitz's Pacific Ocean areas. All these gentlemen were there at the time. From his base on Oahu, Admiral Nimitz was responsible for a predominantly naval offensive through Japan's central Pacific Islands. At the same time, General MacArthur was to conduct a drive northward in eastern New Guinea towards Rabaul on New Britain and then turn northwest towards the Philippines. Many battles and victories were to be achieved by the United States and its allies before the end of the war on August 15, 1945, just days after atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Among these victories included the Solomon Islands, Bismarck Sea, New Guinea. Bringing back any memories, guys? Kiska in Alaska, the Gilbert Islands in 1943, including Tarawa and Macon, the Marshall Islands in 1944, including Kwajalein and Truk, the Marianas, including Guam, Saipan, and Luzon, MacArthur's return to the Philippines and the battles of the Leyte Gulf, and of course, Iwo Jima and Okinawa, which everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but anybody who knows anything about World War II remembers. And now our guest stories. Gentlemen, welcome to today's show about the Pacific Campaign during World War II. Dick, how old were you when you entered the service?
I was 18.
18 years old. Straight out of high school?
No, I didn't go back my senior year. I went to work out the Willow Run Bomber Plant. When they opened that up, I stayed there 3 months, then I went in the Marine Corps.
Serve your country. Russell, how old were you?
I was also 18, but I had tried to enlist when I was 17, and when I graduated from high school, I was still 17. But I went to college for a half year, and I was drafted.
You looked too young to get in?
Looked like I was 16.
I know, that happened to me on the Korean thing.
I've had that problem all my life.
Yeah, they laughed me out of the office. How about you, Roger? How old were you?
17.
17. So think about this. Well, we got 18, 18, and 17, right?
Turned 18 in boot camp.
Cool. And Dick, what was your rank when the war ended?
Pardon?
What was your rank when your war ended?
Corporal.
Corporal?
Yep.
How about you, Russell?
I was a PFC.
Okay. And How about you, Russell?
was a corporal.
Roger, okay.
Corporal.
And how long were you in the Pacific, Dick?
Year and a half.
Okay, from what, 44 to 45?
June 43 to December 44.
Okay.
Mhm.
And how about you, Russell?
I was from February 45 until September of 46.
And that's in your book. And how about you, Roger?
I was 2 years overseas.
Okay. Dick, what were your job or duties in the when you were in the service?
Well, my main job was refueling all the airplanes that came into Bougainville.
Now, Bougainville was in the Philippines.
No, Solomon Islands.
Solomon Islands, I'm sorry about that. Henderson Field was in the Philippines.
No, that was in Guadalcanal.
I get them all confused. Yeah, well, I'm a young buck. Okay.
It was Piva and yoke strips on Bougainville.
That was an important job because if you didn't fuel those guys, they couldn't go up and help the soldiers on the ground, right?
Besides, they were dropping bombs and shelling all around us.
Yeah. How about you, Russell? What
My
were you-
MOS was 745, which is rifleman in the Army, and I was first scout in the first squad of the first platoon of Company K, 63rd Infantry Regiment.
And you got a combat infantry badge somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I was
Congratulations.
67 days in combat.
Congratulations. Roger?
I was a rifleman, and then later on, after we got into Japan, after the war had ended, I went into military police, took training, and was military police in Japan.
Okay. Dick, did you see any Japanese soldiers up close and personal, or were you behind the lines taking care of the planes that took care of the troops?
No, I never did see any Japanese.
You're a lucky guy.
Yeah.
Now, I know what's going to come out of Russell's mouth. Did you see any Japanese
Yeah,
soldiers?
they were never more than 40 or 50 feet away, usually closer. And we were in the jungle most of the time, and we captured some, so I was able to,
That was in the Philippines.
yeah, try to talk to them, you know.
Yeah, we'll get to it later, but I think you got shot, too.
Oh, yeah, I practically walked into a machine gun.
Right? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And you got a little
I got a
memento.
bullet through the leg.
And you got a little
Went right
memento.
through my leg.
Yeah, right through your
Missed the
leg.
bone.
In between the fibia and the...
Tibia.
Yep.
Tibia,
Okay.
fibia, yeah.
How about you, Roger? See any soldiers, Japanese guys up
Yes.
close and personal?
Yes, a number of times.
Yeah.
Most of them were in caves. You didn't see them until you got near them where they could spot you, and then they were firing at you or whatever. But yeah, I saw some. I saw some real close.
And
Yeah.
which islands are we thinking about here?
Okinawa.
Yeah,
Probably
that's
saw a
big
lot
one.
of dead ones, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dick, were you wounded or have any close calls, or when they were bombing and shelling it, anything make you nervous?
No, I never really did have any. The biggest call we had was when a typhoon went through there and killed a bunch of guys. Blew trees right over on them.
What year was that?
44.
I remember, that was a big deal. That storm took out more ships than the Japanese did for a while, didn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I remember reading that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Russell, I know you were wounded. Want to tell us about it?
Well, I was shot with a Japanese machine gun, a heavy, and I was carried out of the jungle. I was in several hospitals on the island of Luzon, and then I was flown to Leyte. I spent 89 days total, but they repaired my leg and they sent me back to duty, and the war ended. I had to serve another year in the Army of Occupation.
And if you'd hit 90 days, you'd have come home. You missed it by one
My
day.
captain told me I had $1 million wound. He says, "You'll be going home, kid."
Didn't
He
quite
was
work.
wrong. Captains
No,
sometimes don't know what
That's
to
too bad.
say.
Roger, how about you? Were you wounded or have any close calls?
I had a lot of close calls too, but we landed, we made a second amphibious landing below Naha partway through the campaign. The landing craft got hung up on a coral reef. We had to wait ashore about 50 yards. They couldn't go ahead, they couldn't back up till the Marines had to go over the side. And needless to say, coral. It was because of coral.
Sharp.
And I ended up by cutting my knee very badly.
Most people know that that coral is like razors.
If you get cut by it, you can almost figure that you're going to get an infection because it's bad news. And we fought. It took we came around on a peninsula down below Naha, which is the capital of Okinawa there, and it took 10 days to secure it. On the last day, my knee gave out, and I rolled down a hill and tumbled over a stone fence about 6 foot high. I had to have help getting up. It gave out my knee. It was so infected, and got up there at the top of the hill there and got a corpsman.
Wow.
And cleaned it all up. It was all infected and everything and bad. And anyway, they helped me, and he cleaned it all up and poured sulfa powder all over it, wrapped it all up, and they pulled us off for 3 days. And by golly, I was able to go back in combat. Boy, was I happy.
Now they had, I know they had, oh, not morphine, penicillin in Europe. Did you have penicillin? I assume you had penicillin in the Pacific.
I guess if they
Yeah,
did,
I had penicillin in the hospital.
I-
The early version of it, they shot it into you every 3 hours.
Yeah, I had a similar thing with my right eye, and it was every 4 hours, but it was great stuff because it helped you
It was
out.
a new miracle drug at that
Yes,
time.
sir. Now, Dick, what were your feelings or emotions during dangerous situations when you were being shelled or bombed by the Japanese? What did you feel? Or did you feel anything, or were you just scared?
Well, you just headed for a foxhole real fast until it was all over with. You're too busy to be scared.
yeah, that's about it too.
Yeah.
A lot of times after it was all over, you sit there and laugh. Really?
Well,
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but I believe it.
Yeah, you're thinking, well, you made another one.
And not looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
How about you, Russell? What were your feelings or
Well,
emotions?
my first combat was on the Shimbu line east of Manila,
It was in the mountains, wasn't it, in the
in the
Philippines?
mountains, and the Japanese would shell us regularly, or at rather irregular times. The feeling was terror at first, you know. My whole body would shake. I could feel my heart beating.
Mhm.
But then after it was over with, people would crawl out of their foxholes and life would go on. You know, basically most of the time up there I was bored because it was long periods and nothing happened.
Yeah.
But when they shelled you, it got your attention right away. You know?
Yeah, if I remember rightly, the Manila fell and the Japanese retreated back to this
Yeah,
line.
they went up to the mountains and dug in a
Made
lot
life
of caves,
miserable.
and it was pretty hard rooting them out.
And if you want to know more about that, they ought to read your book called.
Boy soldier,
There you
coming
go.
of age during World War II.
How about
Thank
you,
you.
Roger? What were your feelings and emotions during dangerous situations? Did you have any, or were you scared, or did you try to get it over with, or?
Well, I think it's in the back of your mind all the time, and like first man there said,
Dick.
Gentleman Dick, that you really haven't got much time to think about it, and when you do get a little rest, you're all you can think about is getting some sleep if you can, and those foxholes are the worst places you can imagine.
Water?
Mm-hmm.
Bugs?
Yeah, we had well, it
They're
had
not too comfortable.
Land crabs?
they had a lot of water, a lot of mud.
Yeah.
And there's be times when you'd roll up in a blanket and a poncho and lay there, and you were laying in water at times, you know, and you were cold at night and everything, and miserable. And this idea about having a foxhole buddy doesn't last long, because it isn't very long and you've lost him.
You'd rather have Dorothy Lamour there?
Oh, yeah. Either something, either they pick him to go to another foxhole because somewhere along somebody got hit or something. So it's nothing worse than being all by yourself at night in a foxhole, because they know you're out there and they're waiting for you to make a mistake, and they can crawl up and, you know, do you in, which some of them did. So, but that foxhole stuff was bad.
They were good about that, crawling up in the middle of the night stuff and kill people and
I have a
go
story.
back in the, and you what?
I have a story if you'll allow me to tell
Do
it.
it, do it.
Okay, just a matter of about a couple of 100 yards from where I was. I was in George Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and I found out the next day that a Japanese jumped in foxhole, cut the throat of a guy, then went into another one, cut that one. And when he jumped into the other one, whether it was the same one, I'm not really sure, but anyway, this guy was pretty good size, and he grabbed him and he strangled him. In the process of strangling him, he got his thumb bit, but he killed him. He killed the Jap.
Yeah.
Then a little while later, we were on a recon, going, and anyway, we were walking, I was on point, and here's this high grass, cane or the elephant grass. I walked right by a Jap officer that was squatted down. I didn't see him. And he didn't want a lowly private like me. He was looking for that major back there. So in just a little bit of time there, I'm, you know, walking by, pretty soon I heard this, kill the SOB, you know, and all that. And it's the same guy. He's got a radio, and he's with Major Carney. And anyway, he strangled. He's got him right up in the air. This Jap, this officer, had raised up with a Nambu pistol. The Nambu pistol malfunctioned. It wouldn't fire. So he reached over and he grabbed him, and like I said, he was holding him like this, strangling him. And he still had that bandage on his thumb where he got bit from those other two deals, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, my squad leader, he had a carbine, so he reached over there and, you know, emptied it into him, and he took the Nambu pistol you know, home, and he had it on the wall when I went to see him one time. But
Wow. Wow. Did
anyway,
you?
I never saw that Jap officer. He was squatted down, but he wasn't waiting for me. He was waiting for that major back there.
Well, most of them weren't that tall, were they? They weren't.
He wasn't very big, no.
Yeah. Did you get malaria? We're talking about jungle and fever and.
I got something after I got into Japan, and I thought it was malaria, and they said something about cat fever, but I know I was awful sick. I was in a naval hospital in Yokosuka for 3 days and nights.
How about you, Russell? Did you get
Everybody
malaria?
in my company got malaria.
Everybody,
I was
yeah.
hospitalized for it in Korea, and I drew compensation for it for 3 years.
My stepfather was in the Pacific, and he had malaria. How about you?
I had malaria too.
Yeah, just about everybody.
Not
had-
enough to hospitalize me, but just enough to give me heavy fevers, cold, sweat.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like it could
Just-
collapse at times.
yeah, I just kept taking Arbor, and finally it went away.
No, I got it. Now, Dick, how about Roger was telling us about a particular event that was very memorable for him. How about you? Did you have anything happen to you that was really memorable, something you'll never forget because of horror or good or bad or whatever?
No, everything just seemed to go along day after day.
How about R&R to Australia?
We didn't have no R&R.
Well, I'm just joking.
That's a laugh, because I've been asked to it. I never had any
Well, no,
R&R.
it's supposed to be a joke.
As we spent a year on Bougainville, and the only R&R was once in a while you got a couple Cokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little things go a
Hey,
long
another
way.
big
Oh, yeah.
deal was we got 3 cans of beer one time up on the Shimbu line. They came up to the front line and passed out 3 cans of beer.
What
Here
kind of
I
beer?
am. It was in brown camouflage
Was it
color.
Cans.
Japanese
Cans.
beer or?
No, this was American beer.
American beer.
3 cans per man. And I was 18. I was too young to drink.
You're
but
old
And
enough to die,
one,
but
you
not
know,
old enough to drink.
I tasted one and it was terrible. So I sold the other 2 for an older soldier. I tell about that in my book.
Oh, wow. Now, do you have any other memorable events, Roger, you want to share with us?
Well, if you want to get back to about being close calls and all
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Okay, we had a lot of mud. Mud was bad. We had, you know, the typhoon season there when monsoon.
And where were you at the time?
monsoon.
Excuse me. Where,
Okinawa.
Okinawa, okay.
Even tanks bogged down and everything. Well, this one day we were laying on a small hill, and all of a sudden a shell dropped right in front of me. Well, the ground was so soft that it penetrated a good share of the ground before it detonated. And I was right in the middle of this squad, and we were laying there. We were pinned down by a machine gun, and all of a sudden I'm down at the bottom of the hill. A shell had lit in front of me. I'm not sure how, and I'm imagining it's a mortar. I'm not sure. It literally lifted me up and blew me backward, and I went down about 30 feet. And the guys come running down, and I'm choking because the gas from the shell, it was in my eyes. I was temporarily blinded for maybe a minute, half a minute or something, and I'm coughing and everything like that. And they come running down. They thought I got killed. That shell was but it penetrated the ground so much that luckily it went up, and otherwise it would have caught me full in the face and probably shoulder and chest area.
Wow. Now, this is a Japanese sword,
Samurai sword, yes, sir.
and you brought this back from World War II, and how'd you get that?
I got that in
Would
Japan.
you-
I didn't get that in combat, really. I mean, I got to be truthful.
Roger, do you mind picking it up and show it to everybody?
Okay.
Careful, watch your mic.
This was probably one of the most prized possessions for people, you know, but anyway, it's a pretty wicked thing because there's a lot of weight there to it.
Yeah.
A lot of weight.
You gave it to me earlier. It's heavy.
And the
Takes 2 hands.
Japanese would use both hands, you know, like this. And if they caught you just right, they could really go pretty well down into your body.
Yeah.
And like I'd said something earlier, that I had a friend on Iwo Jima that the Jap came up in back of him, this officer, but he was far enough back that the blade penetrated, it went in so far and then came back out again. And he turned around and killed him, and then a corpsman saved him from bleeding to death. So, but it was one basically like this, because this was the
Well,
Army.
during the Bataan Death March, didn't they behead
Yes.
some Allied soldiers with those? If you couldn't
Yeah,
keep
if you-
up, they just cut your head off.
If you fell by the wayside, I met some of these guys who were at the Bataan Death March in Japan there.
I did have one thing that was kind of funny, though. I was going around the end of the airstrip with 3,000 gallons of gas, and they were shelling us, and all of a sudden, it sounded like one lobbed right next to me. I let the truck go. I bailed out. The truck rolled ahead and stopped. I got out and looked around, not a thing going on. Walked back, tire blew out on the truck.
I don't think I'd want to be around 3,000 gallons of gasoline in any kind of dangerous situation. Russell, now you brought is that your World War II uniform over there?
Yeah, the story on that was my first Eisenhower jacket.
That's what I wore in Berlin,
When we
yeah.
went from the Philippines up to Korea,
That guy's a lot younger than you were.
we had summer uniforms, and it was winter there.
Okay.
And so they sent us our first Eisenhower jackets.
And there's a
And
copy
they,
of your book, The Boy Soldier.
Yep,
And who's that young guy in the picture there?
that's me at age 19 in Korea.
Oh, that is.
We had these tailored to fit real good, and then we had our pictures taken in a Korean photography
Now,
studio.
you never mentioned that, but after the war, you should have come home. It was 90 days, it was 89, and you recuperated, so they sent your tail to Korea for occupation duty, right?
That's
And then
right.
at some point, they sent you to Japan.
No, I never went to Japan.
Never
I spent
Japan.
spent
So
all
when
my
did you come home?
I came home in September of '46, and I had 53 days of accumulated leave, so my discharge says November 2nd.
When I talk to students in school, they're, you know, I'm a substitute teacher, they're sort of shocked. They say, you mean you didn't come back after the war? No, it took time to bring all these people back. I mean, there was 15 million people.
Right.
You just don't, everybody get on a 747 and fly over. You know, it's hard.
See, the Army discharged a lot of fathers and long service soldiers. Some
You'd
of
have
them
points,
in
right?
Pearl Harbor. They said you 18-year-olds have to serve 2 years. So basically, my service was a year during the war and a year afterwards.
I know that the paratroopers in Europe complained because they couldn't get points because they would fly, you know, parachute in and do their fighting and then go back to England and parachute in. And so they remember the Band of Brothers thing that was going on. Now, Dick, when did you come home? What month, what year?
I got back to States Christmas of '44 and spent 9 months down at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and the war ended there.
North Carolina?
North
where-
Carolina.
North Carolina, that's where my family's from. That's how come I say North Carolina.
Yeah,
Yeah, and West by God, Virginia is where I was born. And not
Morehead
that
City.
You probably don't care, but I know the area. It's gorgeous. And you already said you came back in '46, right, Russ?
Yep.
And what year did you come back, Dick? What month and whatever?
Oh, I came back around July of '47.
47.
I came out, I got out a bit early, because I had 2 years overseas, and then they were sending guys home in droves, and then finally they wanted to get the Marine Corps down to 100,000 men. So I hadn't been home for 2 years. I mean, you know, I had 2 years overseas, so
But you didn't re-up or?
no.
It
No.
just took you that long. You're the longest of it I've ever heard of being overseas before they came home. 47, for God's sake. That's 2 years.
oh yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I was drafted, and that was at the convenience of the government. And they said the duration of the emergency plus 6 months. Well, the emergency went on beyond the surrender of the Japanese.
A little different from
About a
today's
year,
Army,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been in here 12 months. I want to go home. I mean, you know, not a political statement, but geez, you know. Did you guys have an exit strategy in World War II? I don't think so. It's called victory. Okay. Today,
Yeah,
you know, we're always talking about exit strategies. You know.
I was a soldier. I took orders. I
You
didn't
took
have
orders
anything to do
when
with
you
the
won, the war was
strategy or
over,
the
and you
tactics.
came home. All right, good.
Yeah, but you were still under the obligation of the government, and I'll tell you what, you did what they said.
Yes, sir. You didn't complain.
No,
That's a
I
soldier's
enjoyed
job
the-
to take orders,
Yeah.
I,
Well, we're
especially a private.
coming down to the end of the show here, and Any last things that, that you'd like to speak about, Dick?
Well, our planes from Bougainville, their major objective was bombing Rabaul. It was one of Jap's big bases. And then we were sending B-24s all the way to Truk Island, just outside Japan.
Was that near Iron Bottom Sound, Truk, or is that?
What's that?
Do I have the right area, Truk? Iron Bottom Sound, or was that down the Philippines?
Truk is like Pearl Harbor to us, just outside Japan.
Okay.
And we were sending B-24s all the way up there to bomb them.
Yeah, I got the
They
wrong
could only
area.
carry half a bomb load of bombs. The other 1,000, they had 1,000 gallons of gas in the bomb bay.
Wow. How about you, Russell? Any last things that you want to share with us, or?
Well, I'd like to say that I'll be at the Ann Arbor Book Festival this Saturday. Anybody that wants to buy my book, come to booth
Will you autograph a
52.
book?
I'll autograph it. I'll inscribe
I've got mine
them.
right here, and I read it, so you better autograph it when we
I'll
get down here.
inscribe it for you.
Well, thank you very much. And how about you, young man?
Well, after I got into Japan, there's one little thing here that they were sending people home in droves. You know, I mean, people that had been there overseas for a long period of time and blah, blah, you know, all that stuff. So anyway, they needed to make NCOs. I hadn't been in Japan too long, and I was one of the lucky ones to get PFC. As soon as I was as soon as I was PFC, I was an acting corporal. Okay, and then it wasn't very long, and I got promoted again, and I was made a corporal. And as soon as I was a corporal, I was an acting sergeant, and I was a sergeant of the guard. And then finally, I got a chance to go into military. I was in military police, you know, and I took my training over there and everything. And so I was out in town, and I was a sergeant of the guard. And I got a guy driving my Jeep. That was the guy who got cut in the you know, with the samurai sword on Iwo Jima. He drove a Jeep for me. I had an interpreter in the office, and hell, I had pretty good duty, so I didn't really mind that at all, you know. So, but they would never give me that third stripe. But by the time I was getting ready to come home, here comes the major, or I mean the colonel. Anyway, he says, I know I'm going
No,
too long.
I don't want to cut you off,
Okay.
but we've run out of time. And I know
Okay.
you guys don't want to be called heroes, but on behalf of the citizens of Ann Arbor, well, you know, all the guys, you know, I've done 3 or 4 shows here, and everybody laughs. But it's true. You're heroes. Thank God you were there. We won World War II, and we're not speaking Japanese or German. So I'd like to say thank you to the people of Ann Arbor, and hope to see you soon. I'm Ralph Harris, the military guy. Goodbye.